Hello, everyone. I'm Jerry Rothkoff, Managing Attorney of Rothkoff Law Group. Welcome to our continuing series, The Who's Who of Elder Care in the Philadelphia Metro Region and the advocacy individuals provide. It is my honor and pleasure to have Jeff Oppenheimer with us today. Good afternoon, Jeff.
Hi, Jerry.
And you're with us from Ohio, am I correct?
That's correct.
All right. So you're originally from the Philadelphia area, and then you've moved over the past few years to Ohio.
Well, born and raised in Columbus, and then spent 25 years in Philadelphia, and now I'm back in Ohio in the Cleveland area.
And so welcome. And
thank you.
We are meeting with Jeff today to talk about ALS and the advocacy Jeff and the Greater Philadelphia chapter of the ALS Association provides for individuals and families suffering from ALS. And I got to know Jeff probably 6 or 7 years ago when he and his late wife Shelby came to our office. We reconnected over the past year or so. It's been a pleasure. So now, Jeff, you are on the Board of Trustees of the local ALS chapter in Philadelphia. And even though you're now in the Ohio area, so it's great to have you. So thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk, before we talk about the ALS Association, let's talk about, if it's okay with you, how the personal tragedy you and your family faced, and turn it into, I guess if you want to call it a life's mission. So your wife Shelby, she was 48 years old when she passed away with ALS. When was she first diagnosed with ALS?
She was 28 years old.
So for 20 years.
Yes, and the average lifespan after diagnosis is 3 to 5 years. So she was blessed because she had a slower progressing form, and she also had a steel will to live. So that got us to 20 years.
Wow. So let's talk about how that's affected, not so much you personally, I mean, I can't imagine losing a spouse, but how that's affected what you do today. Can you touch upon how that left how it has affected Shelby's passing at such a young age, and the 20 years of, in essence, you being a caregiver,
right?
How that has personally affected you, and maybe even more importantly, Jeff, how does that affect what you do today, and how has that really affected your outlook on life?
Wow, okay.
I'm getting pretty deep.
Yeah,
I know.
no, Jerry.
I tend to do that.
I like it a lot.
All right, you're on the Rothkoff couch now.
Well, if you'll pardon the indulgence, I do want to just go back a little bit. It was actually 2011 when we met. And just for some backstory of how our paths crossed, I had applied for the Michael Dallas waiver twice on my own. Felt like I filled out the form sufficiently and was rejected twice. And then in 2011, the company that I worked for that took great care of its employees was acquired by a private equity firm. And the first thing they did was cut the insurance to the tune of about $50,000 out of pocket, which if I dropped dead at 68, I would have made it to 70 had it not been for 2011, because it was really a very, very tough time. Shelby was distraught that her living was bankrupting us. And so I called the ALS Association and said, I need help. And they said, you should probably call Jerry Rothkoff. And that has been the beginning of a very nice friendship, because the story has a happy ending. The benefit that we got exceeded what we were getting in insurance. And so we were able to carry on for much longer. And I can't thank you and your staff enough for what it is that you did for us.
It was an absolute pleasure and honor assisting you and Shelby, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you. Thank you. As far as return on investment goes, it doesn't get any better than my experience with you all. So having said all of that, we did battle. Shelby passed away in June of 2015. And we were just out of options. I mean, she was not going to take this in any way without a fight. But, there does come a time with ALS where, as it stands right now in 2020, you end with a loss, and it was very difficult. No matter how long it takes, it's still just very difficult. So my life had been 24/7 up until that point. My job was demanding. I'd come home. We were basically running a one-room hospital. I'd be woken up in the middle of the night with a situation many times. And it became a way of being. And I have no complaints. So then she passed away in 2015, and my daughter went off to college in 2016. And suddenly, just like that, I was alone. So I sold the house. I moved to Center City, Philadelphia, and I was really looking for purpose. And I was under the assumption that I wanted to run away from ALS, and then I realized that's exactly what I don't want to do. The only time I feel really good is when I'm helping. So, the thing about a nonprofit organization is if you show up and say, I'd really like to help, they will find work for you. So I became a member of the board, and that has been a great pleasure for me. I am on the Care Services Committee, which, is where my heart is. I'm also on the Development Committee because, we can't pay for the services without raising the money. So that's also where my heart is. And let me tell you, it is a joy to work with these people. It's almost like group therapy because almost all of us are there because of a loss. And here we are trying to take that and make life better for those who went through what we did. And it's really just a joy for me to be involved.
So you get emotionally fulfilled by the opportunity to give back from your personal experience and help others along the way who arguably helped you.
Correct. Absolutely. No, there's no arguable. We would not have made it without the Greater Philadelphia chapter of the ALS Association. And since you brought that up, I do have a web address I wanted to point out. It's webpa.alsa.org. So it's webpa.also, which is short for ALSassociation.org. And this is a tough year for a lot of people. It's a very tough year in nonprofit. And if you've ever been touched by ALS, then and I don't have to say a word. And if you're in a place where you can help, we would certainly appreciate your support.
Thank you. And we'll make sure that website, it goes on social media pages in addition to the video of this interview itself.
Thank you very much.
Week or so. So let's talk about then the Greater Philadelphia chapter of the ALS Association. So let's talk in general, what services does the chapter provide for an individual with ALS or their families, their caregivers, extended family? Can you just talk in general about some of the services that are provided?
Sure. So being on the Care Services Committee, we have an Abrams in Care program where we will support families where there's a patient that needs in-home care. Unfortunately, I wish we had all the money in the world. We would be able to support them 100%. We're able to support them as best as we possibly can. We have a transportation program. The worst for an ALS patient, and so many of them are living it right now, is to be a prisoner in your own home. Some are able to afford a van and some are not. And we have drivers and we have vans and we take them patients and their families where they want to go. We have an awful lot of support groups where people can get together and share a very unique and a very common experience. We have social workers that are unbelievable, and they're in touch with every patient at least once every 3 months, keeping track of what their needs are, familiar with what the resources are and pairing those two to make sure that they're getting what they're needing. So that's the gist of it. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple key things, but what we do is help someone in the process of starting out with absolute devastation. For those who aren't familiar with ALS, it's a neurodegenerative disease. And what I like to say is, you know what degeneration looks like? It looks like one day you can no longer button your shirt. One day you discover that you can no longer get the fork to your mouth. It's awful. To witness something like that with someone that you care about is to change you forever. And so we are there from the beginning with the intake phone call where people don't know up from down. And so we start from a counseling perspective, and then we introduce them to the resources of the organization. And then we have a clinic, multiple clinics actually, because we serve not just Philadelphia, but Delaware, New Jersey, and the eastern half of Pennsylvania. I think we have 6 clinics where they will go in, and it's multidisciplinary. So part of the struggle with ALS is that it's difficult to move around when you're in the more advanced phases. It's uncomfortable. So what we do is we set up a rotation of people, and Shelby and I used to do this all the time. You sit in one room, and in comes the social worker, in comes the occupational therapist, in comes the nurse, in comes the MD, and you're just being seen by a team of people while you stay in one place. So we really try to think of everything that a patient will go through and what their family will go through as well. You know, we have programs for the children of patients with ALS. We have programs for the spouse of people with ALS, and we are a holistic, serve all to the best of our ability organization. I will say that it's funny, I guess, for lack of a better term. Shelby and I moved from Columbus to Philadelphia in 1995, the summer of 1995. And she was diagnosed February 20th, 1996. Wouldn't you know that Philadelphia, bar none, had the best chapter in the United States at that time. We still have one of the very best, if not the best. That's all the vision of one woman, Ellen Phillips, who took us from literally a shoebox with index cards to an operating budget of approximately $6 million a year. We will fall vastly short of that number this year. Unfortunately, while we are extremely proud and grateful to the Philadelphia Phillies, we are the official charity of the Phillies. With no baseball, we've lost our best fundraiser of the year, the Phillies Festival. So if I may, that's webpa.alsa.org, because in a year like this, we need all the help that we can get to maintain the services that we currently provide. So it's a challenging year, but the work itself is extremely rewarding.
Are there any specific ALS-associated issues with COVID that the association is addressing, or is it just, or it's more just general population going issues, obviously exacerbated with ALS for transportation services, et cetera? I mean, how are your ALS patients dealing with the social isolation?
It's very difficult. You know, ALS, more likely than not, you are going to have respiratory issues, so you are very much at risk. As if they didn't have enough to worry about, COVID comes along, and it has really had a very difficult emotional impact on our patients. We have adjusted in the same way the rest of the world has, where we used to have in-person meetings. We have Zoom on demand, so that our social workers are maintaining close contact. And where necessary, we will go into the home with, all the proper precautions. But generally speaking, this is a very tough time for our community.
You mentioned, you were married to Shelby for how many years, Jeff?
Boy, Jerry, you're going to make me think like I forgot my anniversary or something. So we were married in 1992.
And
So that's 18 years wow. I don't feel like I'm this old, but I guess if I'm doing the math right, is that 28 years
92 to 90.
to 2020? Yeah, 28 years.
Okay.
I'm too young to have been married 28 years, but that is the actual factual number.
Okay. So, and so what have you learned as from being a caregiver?
Mhm.
What have you learned, and how has that affected with how you communicate with another, the empathy that you show? How's that affected you on a deeper basis, the relationship you have with your family, etc.? Because that has had to profoundly affect you, arguably in a positive way.
Without a doubt. So they say that ALS makes you more of who you are. I don't like to lose, Jerry. And so there's a lot of humility involved. There is the gift of recognizing little problems as little. They say don't sweat the small stuff. I don't know how. I've just dealt with so many, momentous, literally life and death issues that, whatever it is, it will work out. It'll be fine. I carry that with me all the time. But more so than anything, I just have an appreciation for, I'll just say it, life. It's no given. Tomorrow is guaranteed to no one. And I have a greater appreciation for the struggle that people go through, whether it's ALS or not. And then finally, I would say that I appreciate every day, and I see splendor in so many things that, I might have otherwise just walked by, because I've lived life and death for so long that, I know it's cliche, but every day is a gift, and I really feel that.
Well, thank you for sharing your personal thoughts, Jeff. We've been speaking with Jeff Oppenheimer, who is on the Board of Trustees of the Greater Philadelphia chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. I'm sorry, ALS. Sorry about that. Right. Sorry, the ALS Association.
Still in the neurodegenerative category, but
yeah,
yes,
it is. So used to saying Alzheimer's, so right. The ALS Association. My apologies. So, thanks so much for your time today, Jeff. Thank you, and most importantly, thank you for sharing your personal thoughts. Trust me, those thoughts help others get through what over the almost 2 decades worth that you and Shelby experienced together. So that means a lot to others who are going down the road that you experience. So thank you for sharing your personal thoughts, and thank you for all you do for advocacy for those with ALS and their families.
Well, Jerry, actually, I'm glad you just mentioned that, because a philosophy that Shelby and I subscribed to was win the day. So ALS, if you think about it from, what it is and a lifespan, it would crush you. So we always started with, yesterday might have been the worst day of our lives, but the sun came up today, it's top of the first, 0-0. Let's just do it all over again, because to carry yesterday with you is to drag you down. So it's the gift of a reset every day. And so when you mentioned the struggles that other people go through, specifically, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did want to say that that really helped us. And I encourage others to borrow that mindset. And in terms of the other stuff, I mean, I appreciate your kind words. You know, when I reached that point where I was suddenly, you know, without my wife, my daughter, caregivers everywhere, and I was just by myself, as time went on, it just became clear that my future only had one door, and it is very satisfying to give back.
Well, thank you for what you do for giving back, and and many others appreciate and can benefit from the opportunity that you have to give back. So thank you so much for your time. I wish you and your family well.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for all you guys do for people in a tough spot. I can't say enough about the professionalism and the care that we got from Rothkoff Law Group. And so right back at you. Thank you.
You got it. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone. So thanks. And we'll catch you next time.
Take care.